So, shit. Well, I did a couple crossings before that were like 33 miles in Hawaii, channel crossings. So I was used to the idea of crossing a channel. The thought where it became reality was actually conceived at a bar.
Of course.
With a lot of tequila involved, I
There
think.
you go.
Was someone talking you into it, or were you talking yourself into it?
I think we were talking about crossings, and the guy I was talking to was Cuban, and we just talked about that channel, and it was like, oh, maybe that's a good idea, I think.
Well, tell Tony a little bit about the crossing in Hawaii, so he has a mental picture of what that was like.
The crossings in Hawaii that I did were the Molokai to Oahu, which is a 33-mile world championship race. It's downwinder, kind of, and it's one of the most dangerous channels in the world. And basically, you're going with the wind, with the waves, but the waves are also like 10 feet plus.
They're hitting 10 feet.
Giant. So, but they're not breaking, but the swells are
But
huge.
the swell still, I grew up a fisherman. I know what that is, a commercial fisherman. So
I mean, like, we have a video of me, and I had my support boat had 2 stories, and they were videoing on the top story. And when I went down in the trough, when I went down in the trough, they couldn't even see me in the video. Wow. So it was really cool. But anyways, so I had some experience with channel crossings, and I really liked that kind of paddling, just because at the time, working full time, I reached a stage in my paddle career where I was faster than the majority of people here, but just slower than the professionals. Mm-hmm. But the professionals were real professionals who were paddling like a professional athlete schedule, which I couldn't do. So I couldn't break that barrier of speed because I needed the time to do that. So these crossings allowed me to still be able to take advantage of my ocean skills with a race and have a little more competition within myself, because you're out there kind of battling yourself and other people, but more yourself. And then that's kind of where the Cuba thing came in. The only difference was it was about 3.5 times longer than anything I paddled. But I knew it wasn't going to be as rough. So I figured if I can handle that, this is only 3.5 times longer, probably. Molokai took me 6 hours. So it's 20 hours longer.
Okay, so the 33-miler was 6 hours?
It was about, I think, 6 hours.
That's moving, though.
Yeah, I think
that's impressive. To use that kind of speed with that kind of a sea, because the time, I would assume, and I don't know much about this, but the time lost, I understand that it would work in concert, balance and forward momentum, but I'd have to think there are points where balance takes precedent over actual paddling and locomotion with that kind of a swell. So that seems to me like still a really good pace.
It was a really good pace, actually, on that one. I surprised myself, but so that's kind of how I came into the crossing world. And then we figured, well, what's close to Florida? Well, we knew that the Florida Straits was crossed because Diane and I had swam it. So I knew it was achievable if somebody could swim it. And that's when I kind of thought, well, let's try that one.
Well, something 4 hours long, 4 times longer is a lot longer. It's not, that's like, what? Hey, I just did a 3-mile race. Hey, why don't we run a marathon?
Well, how about a boxing fight with 48 rounds?
Right. Sure, 48 rounds, I'll do it.
I don't know what I was really thinking. I guess I just was up for what I really wanted to do, actually, now that I think about it, was I wanted to see how far I could push myself, because I feel like not that I never challenged myself, but I feel like, the point where you hear people talking about they broke and this and that. And I've always been a pretty natural athlete, even with paddling. I don't train too much, and I've been able to be pretty quick with paddling without training. So I wanted to see what that feeling was of breaking mentally, physically, whatever it was. And I just figured, well, hell, nothing else I've been doing is working. It just seems like it's not easy, but easy. Like, what can I do to put myself in a position where I'm going to break myself? And so I kind of, and you know what, there was a point out there where, not that I was breaking, but I actually was like, oh, okay, this is where the line is. Like, I'm either going to stop now or I'm going to finish. And that was probably the most tough mental decision I ever had to make with anything.
So help everybody out. Okay, once again, everybody, it's not a audio problem. She did paddle from Cuba to Key West. Right? What was the exact mile? Is it exactly 90 miles?
No, it was 115 miles.
Wow, 115.
Yep.
From where you left to 115 miles.
And tell them how long it took you.
It took 27 hours and 48 minutes nonstop.
Wow.
Oh my God.
27 hours and 40 minutes straight paddling, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane. Now, obviously, before you embarked on this, you had to train for it.
Right.
And I always say, quote, the easiest sports to train for from a sort of a pragmatic standpoint are ultra endurance events, because you just got to do volume, because the goal, you got to finish, because if you don't finish, then it kind of doesn't matter. So explain the mindset of you training and increasing volume, and also what your longest paddle was before you did this, because it wasn't that long, actually. So tell everyone about that.
I first had to learn how to slow down, which was different because I was always training for speed. So that took me a little bit actually to slow down. I was training during lunch and on my after work. I would get off at 4 because I was in inspections at the time. So I worked 7 to 4, Monday through Friday. During lunchtime, I would either train in the gym or run or do yoga. And then after work, I would be on the board. And then weekends were my long paddles. The longest paddle I did though was, I think it was 12 hours.
Yeah, 12. I remember it was 12. Yeah.
Yeah. And, at that point, I had paddled a lot of like 4, 6 hours, 8 hours in the ocean, testing my food stuff. And I knew that I knew what to do nutrition wise. Like I knew what would work with that. And I just figured that after 12 hours, it was going to be a mental game. And if I knew the nutrition was working at that point, like something could go wrong later with my stomach and digestion, but I had pretty stable foods, kind of.
Yeah, you'll have to tell us about the foods, but go on.
Yeah. So I figured at this point, and even the 12 hours. So when I did my 12-hour paddle, I didn't go in the ocean. I just went back and forth in this 3-mile loop or something, maybe 5 miles for 12 hours. So I felt like that was pretty good mental preparation anyways, and had to zone out. So I figured, well, what am I going to do? Keep just doing this over and over again? Like, how long am I going to have to paddle these long distances? I knew my body was strong. I was working on yoga and mobility work for my like ankle flexors and everything, like just making sure I was stable there, my knees. I knew I was strong enough. I didn't have any injuries, like everything felt good. But I knew the mental part was going to be the hard part. And I just had to learn how to zone out. So
yeah, you're pioneering this, because not like, we have so much knowledge, some research, but many practical references on how to train for a marathon, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's nothing here. Am I right? Like,
yeah, no.
Where do you go? Where do you reference? You really have to kind of figure out, all right, this is how much training I think I'm going to need. This is how many hours I think I'm going to have to push through, after my longest. So you pretty much created your own protocol, I assume.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was expecting it to take up to maybe 30 hours, I think, in my head. So, that's kind of what I wrote everything for with the nutrition wise. But paddling is very strenuous on your body, and with the repetitive motion of just this and that, it's like I didn't want to injure myself before. And we found data after, because we did saliva samples, that it's probably a good thing that I didn't do too much longer paddles throughout that time, in a way,
Yeah, because you were wrecked for a while after the crossing. I mean, your body was a mess. Explain though, I think these are sort of the funny parts of this. Before we get into how many times you thought about quitting, tell everyone what you were eating. Because I know when we had talked about your nutrition, I said it's calories, 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 calories. Your brain has to stay awake. If your brain quits, you're done.